I just this weekend, for the first time, played Persona 3. And
nice.
I played the remake, Persona 3 Reload. I had written Persona off entirely because I bounced off the intro of Persona 4 5 times, and I thought I knew what Persona was about. And what I experienced over the weekend was that's not the case at all. Having that experience has really reversed a lot of not my positions necessarily or critiques, but just my reasons for engaging with it to begin with. Hello, welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kason.
And today we will be discussing video game remakes.
Yes.
That's today's topic. If you clicked on this video, it probably says something like, has there ever been a good video game remake? Or what is the point of video game remakes? Or something along those lines. And I want to assure you that this is not a bashing remakes podcast. We're not here to tell you that everybody always sucks at it, or remakes are always bad, or they never get the point, or anything like that. I have actually put a lot of thought into what I wanted to talk about today, and I think it's going to be a really good discussion. But I think that there is a growing sentiment among players in the world, a fatigue, all we ever get now from big studios outside of like a few tentpole projects every 10 years is a million remakes or remasters of old games. Yeah. And, you know, these are usually legacy titles, beloved titles, all-time great titles. And so there's a certain care and attention to detail that big fans of those games want and expect. They want the product coming out now to live up to a certain standard in terms of like quality of life and, you know, the sorts of things they expect from modern games, but at the same time not interfere with the soul of the original piece. And there's a real fine line to walk there, right? So anyway, we're going to be discussing that. And one thing that I want to, you know, just put out there right away is if we were to answer that question, what is the point of making a video game remake? We are talking about artistically. We are not talking about business-wise or monetarily, commercially, financially. Yeah. Obviously, there is a reason, which is to make money, that is probably the primary driver behind this wave or movement of all these remakes and remasters we're getting. There's an audience for that thing. We already know it's safe to re-release that because a lot of people will want to buy and play that again. It's a popular title. Yeah. So when we talk about this, we're not talking about that reason. We're talking about if you are a creator, you've made something that was beloved 20, 30 years ago. What is the artistic reason, if there is one, to bring that out again, and to remake it in such a sense to where you are actually going in and altering the art, like the literal art, the graphics and presentation aspects. Yes. Right? So what would be the point of doing that as an artist is one question I want to hit on. Yeah. The other is, can you do so in a way? Okay, I keep wanting to say, can you make it good? But I also want to get beyond good and bad.
Beyond good and evil. How about that?
I don't know how to phrase this because this is also at the center of my talking point today. Is there's not like a nice catchy way to say it. Beyond good and evil just like slides off the tongue and it feels great. and saying beyond good and bad is too derivative or similar to that. Yeah. So I don't know what the perfect way to put it is, but beyond my personal opinions of it being good or bad. Sure. I want to get beyond that in a conversation around this. My opinion doesn't matter to me at all, and it shouldn't matter to anybody really. I'd rather get beyond that into more interesting ground.
Very nice.
In the conversation, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So based on that premise, where would you like to begin?
Well, I would actually like to begin with George Lucas a little bit.
That is one of the things I wanted to talk about.
Good,
So that's a great
good.
place to start.
So I was very excited. I grew up watching the original trilogy often, over and over. And we had the VHS tapes. And I remember my aunt had like a silver box with like widescreen VHS tapes, which was cool because I didn't realize how much of the movie I was actually missing. But in 1997, George Lucas decided he was going to re-release these movies with updated visual effects and whatnot.
Yep.
And this is where I will come in and say...
In large part, too, because the new trilogy was going to be coming out.
Yes.
So it's like
the prequels.
Re-release these 3 movies with updated visual effects as the new trilogy starts coming out.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And
bring them up to some sort of comparable level of visual effects quality, something like that.
It was brilliant, financial wise, of course, but each one only had a theatrical release of a few weeks, and then they put the next one out for a few weeks, and then the next one out. So I got to see Star Wars in theaters in 1997 when they were re-released. But when you hear George Lucas talk about his reasoning for doing this, you brought up to maybe keep things in line with the future prequels that he was about to do. I mostly just heard, and often on these VHS tapes, there was actually like a little 20-minute before I don't think there were previews on these. It just was like an interview with George Lucas. Hey, why'd you do this? And most of what he said was, the technology's better now, so I'm just going to make it better because technology's better. And I would like to submit that as being a one of the ways that a remake can go wrong. If the only reason you're remaking it is because, I'm just going to make it, we just have better technology now, so I'm just going to make it with better technology again. Without, I mean, he's the original author, so I don't want to be too critical here.
This is why I think this is such an interesting example to talk about.
Yeah.
Because this is the auteur of the work, revisiting the work for reasons he thinks are important.
Yes.
And doing them in the way that he claims are the way he originally intended them to be.
That's what he always said. I always wanted the stormtroopers to look and act a certain way. I always wanted Han Solo to dodge the bullet first, or whatever it is. He'll say, I always wanted it to be this way. And there are certain things, like I remember in Empire Strikes Back, when Lando and Han are running through the halls, and you see this like gorgeous matte painting out the window. That wasn't there in the original.
Right.
There are subtle things he did there, but then there are also bigger things that change people's perception of the story in general and stuff like that. He added stuff in, and even he continued to do so, even with the new DVD releases, and he put Anakin instead of the old actor for Darth Vader and all of that kind of stuff. He continued to do that. But often his reasoning being just technology-based, I don't like that reasoning, generally speaking. But that doesn't mean there isn't a good reason. But if your only reason for remaking something is technology's better, so I just could remake it every 20 years, right? Because technology just keeps getting better. And if that's your only reason for doing it, I would say maybe just don't do it. Like it's kind of hard to find the original Star Wars, actually. The one that aired in 1977.
It's almost impossible.
That art has been lost to all of the redos that re-recordings, even the version I watched had Jabba the Hutt at the beginning of A New Hope, and it was supposed to be there was an actor in that place. It wasn't Jabba. His name was Jabba, I guess, but he was just like some big dude, and he wasn't a slug creature.
That was cut from the original film entirely.
Oh, that whole scene was cut completely?
It wasn't in the original movie.
Oh, okay.
Because they didn't.
I assumed that I missed something.
They were not able to accomplish the shot he wanted to do.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know, I can't remember now if Jabba changed from a man into the slug by the time the third movie was made.
I don't know either, yeah.
But that shot was cut. That whole scene was cut from the 1977 version of the movie. It wasn't in there and was added back in the special editions.
Yeah.
With the digital effects.
With all the...
To be able to animate Jabba moving through a scene, which they could not have accomplished practically at the time.
Right.
So yeah. But it was a scene that was shot originally. It was in the original
they used
script.
Original footage, yeah.
It's just that they couldn't accomplish... So this is an interesting... I don't want to say counterpoint because I don't even disagree with what you're saying, as much as another point to consider in terms of the technology aspect. If it's just because we didn't have the technology, now we have the technology.
Is that a good enough reason?
Is that a good enough reason? Well, he originally writes the script with this scene intended to be in there.
Yeah.
And if the reason for cutting that scene was because technology doesn't allow us to do what I want, does that then give you, a good enough reason 20 years later to put the movie out with the scene that you meant to be in there that you couldn't put in there?
Yeah, I'm going to say no, but that is interesting. The only reason I say no is because Return of the Jedi had Jabba the Hutt in it, and it was only a few years later.
Yeah.
And he's in it. It's just, I guess they didn't have the budget. It was more of a budget problem then, not a technology problem.
Probably.
It was just that we don't have the budget to make Jabba now. We'll make him later if I ever make another one of these, which turned out he got to make several more. But it was less technology because I think you can get creative, and he did in so many ways with that limitation on technology that was utterly brilliant. And that when you redo it now using today's technology, it kind of dwarfs the accomplishment of those movies in terms of, well, now it just kind of looks like what movies look like now. But if you watch what it looked like originally in the context of, when it was first released, I feel like you should be able to appreciate it and see because the using the new technology today, I don't know that they were necessarily able to blow people's minds the way they were back then. Mm-hmm. It just kind of looked how movies look now. Yeah. I will say at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, there was a pretty cool space battle that might have been, for its time, the best one ever made. Yeah. And that was pretty dang sweet. I do remember that. But for the most part, it didn't. The new technology just kind of brought it up to speed with everything else instead of surpassing everything else, which was what the original did.
Yeah, I think you could maybe even make that same case for the Rogue One space battle, right?
Okay, sure. That was quite
kind of did that again,
space battle. Yeah.
We jump up from 2007's.
Yeah, 2005 was Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, 2005 to whenever that movie came out,
2017, 18, maybe.
Something mid-20 teens, something like that.
Maybe late. Yeah.
So I see what you're talking about there. So I know we said we're going to talk about video game remakes, but this is such an interesting place to start, if only because it's the original creator messing with, I won't say messing with, that makes it sound negative, changing, altering, making adjustments to, adding to his own art.
Yeah, it's a different thing when Disney does it and everyone complains Disney, did things they ought not to have done. But it's more interesting when George Lucas is the one who did.
With video game remakes where maybe that original creator is no longer at the company that owns the intellectual property and they want to remake or re-release something.
Right,
and that original creator or director or whoever might not be around to have a creative input in that remake project. So in order to sort of set the grounds, I feel like it's good to start here and then move towards, well, then what about these other situations?
Perfect.
So, sorry, we'll hang on Star Wars for just a bit longer here. It's interesting to me because he feels the need to continue what I would think in his mind is improving it or getting it closer to what he intended or had the vision for originally. Right. And I have a certain sympathy for that.
Sure.
Being
Revising
someone
works.
who has revised my own work and is about to, for instance, go downstairs after we finish recording this podcast and essentially remake a video series that was pretty popular on the internet, in which people have been angry at me for having unlisted or taken off the internet, and will probably take issue with when I release in a different format with a different mindset behind it in a way that I think is more complete, more accurate, more professionally done, higher quality, more comprehensive, all of these things in my mind that I think will make a better video. I'm sure there are people who will say, but it's missing a certain spirit or a certain...
that it had in the original.
I think there are people all the time who they follow somebody when they are at the beginnings of their start to something.
Right.
And there's a certain rawness, a certain amateur nature to it, but that gives it just a certain rawness, even though you don't have, there's rough edges, but like that's part of what makes it special in the minds of those maybe early adopters of the artist, right?
Right.
And they like that aspect of it because if there's a realness, a genuine art to that what that person's releasing, that when it goes through all of the refinement and it goes through this, you know, layers and layers of professional tampering at like a certain level, that people might feel like it loses.
Right.
And so this might be a good comparison there when George Lucas doesn't have all the money in the world and the lack of oversight maybe that later on he would have more control over, that there's something in the soul of the thing that someone who went to watch that movie in 1977 experienced a magic there that might lose some of its bite or its edge. So that might be an argument. And in fact, it is an argument that many people make. I don't want to watch the special editions of Star Wars. I want to watch the one that I saw in the theater as an 11-year-old in 1977. That's the version of it that hit me, was really special, and something was lost in that extra refinement or in that adding to or trying to perfect the thing. So I want to address that sentiment. And because I have been on both sides of this coin in a really interesting way very, very recently. So there's 4 video game projects that I kind of wanted to touch on in light of this discussion, where I'm ultra on the side of the coin of I was there when the thing launched.
Yeah.
And I understand the cultural context in which it was released. And I have a very strong personal attachment to it, a strong emotional attachment to it. This art moved me in a powerful way at the time. Yeah. And I obsessed over that particular thing, have played it, if not 5+ times, maybe even 20+ times. I know this thing in and out like the back of my own hand. I am the obsessive fan for that thing. So those 2 projects would be Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 2 and Final Fantasy VII, PlayStation 1, 1997. Now, on the other side of that coin are 2 games. One, I'll call myself more middle of the road, which is Demon's Souls. So I was an early adopter, a day one adopter of the original game.
Yeah.
I didn't really love it that first time trying to get into it. It's a game that I only learned to love through brute force and through actually finally understanding the game design philosophy and mechanics by breaking through with Dark Souls, then going back and learning to love Demon Souls. But also, my experience with Demon Souls was one in which, while I loved its atmosphere and like the ideas of sort of the general story, I did not get into the deep weeds of the lore in the same way that like Souls YouTube and Twitter has. Yeah. I am not like the expert on that stuff the way that other YouTube channels, there are many of which I could mention, are ultra experts on all of that deep lore and stuff, and they know it like the back of their hand in the same way that I might know Shadow of the Colossus or Final Fantasy VII. So a little bit different there, but I'm sort of we'll call it casual in that respect. Then I just this weekend, for the first time, played Persona 3. And nice. I played the remake, Persona 3 Reload. So this is my first experience.
That's a new one, right?
Yes, it just came out last year.
Cool.
This is my first experience with Persona 3. But it has many other releases going all the way back to its original PlayStation 2 release. And then, as Persona games always do, they have a better version that comes out a few years later that has additional content. in this case, a whole epilogue chapter that sort of like adds a whole bunch of story to the end of it. That's called FES, the FES Persona 3, which was also on PlayStation 2. And then they had a portable version of that game, which was a little more like, what would you call that? Like a visual novel, like, you know what I mean? Like it's when they call it Persona 3 portable.
Yes,
it's on the PSP and it's very much sort of like altered in that way to where it's more just like the story and a lot less heavy on the gameplay elements. And then you have this Persona 3 Reload, which is a full remake of the original game, but it's designed in such a way to where they're trying to bring it in parody with Persona 5 and maybe Persona 4 a little bit. Because Persona 5 was the big global hit.
Yeah.
Right? That, sort of exploded. And so they wanted to remake it in a way to where it visually sort of matches what people expect who were big fans of Persona 5. So what originally had kind of chibi looking models and like a little bit of a different visual style is now been designed to look like the latest big hit in the Persona series. You can probably already see where people take issue with this.
Of course.
And so, okay, all that preamble to say, I had a really, really great time with Persona 3 Reload. Like, I thought it was great. I was sitting there playing it. I was surprised myself, given my own problems with Persona 4 and the 5 times I've bounced off of that game. And so I'm sitting here going like, hey, I'm having a good time. I really like this. Let's get online and look into the history of this game a little bit, kind of see where it came from.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm seeing how many people are upset about this remake. They think that it all the same types of things that I might have said
about the other
about
ones.
Shadow of the Colossus remake and especially Final Fantasy VII remake. Right? So I'm sitting here going, look at all these people all pissed while I had a really good time. It's a very interesting position to be in. It has really changed a lot about the way that I want to approach art appreciation and analysis moving forward, and has sort of given me a mirror to look into a little bit at myself in terms of the way I debated or discussed or presented my opinions on things in the past. So I've just done a really, really, really long setup for a conundrum I found myself in. And I wanted to ask you if you have had similar experiences where you've been on both sides of that coin
I have.
before.
Absolutely.
And what were those projects?
One of them, here's one that I often think of, and it's the fact that Christopher Tolkien hated the Lord of the Rings movies. And I think the movies are awesome.
Yeah.
And I think Christopher Tolkien's awesome. And I think John Ronald Reuel Tolkien is awesome. And I have read the book so many times. And I have had thoughts when I was younger. I was like, man, it'd be so cool to sit with Tolkien and watch those movies with him.
Yeah, and see what he thought.
The more I learn about Tolkien and the older I get, the more I'm like, I actually don't want to watch those movies with him. He was kind of a grumpy guy. He wouldn't enjoy watching those movies. And I understand now why. I still love them though. And I have had to kind of just think about that in different ways. Like, man, these movies are such a big part of my childhood. And part of the reason why I like them so much is because they released when I was 14 years old. And, they mean a lot to me. And I think they're really good. If you look at them a certain way, you can see how well they kept to the spirit of the books. But in other, maybe more obvious ways, they really deviated at in large ways in many points, right? And so I've just had to think about that many times. Like, you know what? How do I hold these two things in tension, right? How do I understand that this is not what Tolkien would have wanted, but I love it so much, but also the stuff that Tolkien did is really dope and sweet, and maybe it could, I've kind of come to the conclusion, like, I don't know that I care much about any more Tolkien media. Like, the books are there, and it is what it is, and I don't participate or even get remotely excited about any of the new Tolkien stuff that comes out.
Power,
none of it, or even the Rohirrim anime recently.
Yeah, I've heard that's pretty good.
I haven't watched it, and I don't care to, and I probably never will.
What about Christopher Tolkien released
Children
stuff.
of Hurin and the History of Middle
I know
Earth.
that you liked, but like, let's say
Love
Baron
all
and
of it.
Luthien or some of the other.
Yeah.
I think they just released one on what's the name? It's been so long since I've been into Tolkien lore. The city that's hidden.
Oh, Gondolin.
Gondolin.
Yeah. The story of
fall
Gondolin. The fall of Gondolin.
Yeah.
I've read all those. They're really, really good.
So this is just the reason why I want to make this distinction is there's layers of Tolkien elitism here.
Yeah,
there's
because some people won't accept Christopher.
What
Yeah.
J.R.R. Tolkien wrote is worth liking, reading, considering at all.
Which means even the Silmarillion is out.
Yes, for those people.
They don't know what Christopher edited in himself.
Right.
And so they're like, we can't trust it.
So there's like the ultra elitism, which is which is if J.R.R. Tolkien himself did not write these words, and if he did not have a say in the editing process, he was dead before this thing was released, it is unacceptable.
It is not canon at all.
So you have like that layer. Then you have Christopher was his son, grew up with him, heard the stories. These stories were told to him as
also
bedtime
was
stories.
a linguist himself who specialized in Nordic languages and all
There's
that.
nobody more apt or more qualified to have spoken on behalf of the Father, so to speak, than him. I will accept that. But they had no say in the movies, therefore the movies are blasphemous.
Yes.
So then there's that middle level of elitism. And then you have...
And now you have the new stuff that is... I guess Peter Jackson is the connection for that because he's producing all of it. Well, not all of it.
Well,
not
even then, you have the fan who will say the Lord of the Rings movies are something very special.
The Hobbit movies
but
suck.
The Hobbit movies are awful. This is maybe more where we fell into as a level of elitism. And then you have...
They aren't good, though. Those movies aren't good.
We'll talk about them at some point.
The best part of the movies is the ending credits of the third one. Yeah.
And then you have Rings of Power, which is like a whole nother level, a whole nother maybe audience of people who might have enjoyed that, and then having to sift through
all the
levels of elitism all the way down to you're battered and bruised and torn apart and have I think it's an apt
so many levels.
It's an apt,
that's a good point.
Analogy to make this sort of like sifting or purifying process that one goes through of all the layers of rock and sand to get to the bottom, the pristine pool of
which is the pure original truth
of J.R.R. himself. Only there, right? So like a person might feel like they in their discussions and arguments with other people, they might get to a point where it's really fatiguing or just like you feel bad trying to have discourse about this thing you liked online and just getting the hell beaten out of you by, So anyway, I hope that was a little clunky and clumsy the way I worded that, but hopefully you understand where I'm coming from.
I do, because I mean, I've heard you explain like your experience with Fire Emblem Awakening, for example, or I talked to somebody else who told me that the third Hobbit movie is their favorite movie of all time. Yeah. And he was like, it's just a cool battle and it was dope and it was awesome and everyone was fighting. And I was like, yeah. That's an apt description of that movie. Also, maybe why I didn't like it, but and also the line "because it was real." I can't do that line. But the movie is I can see why people who aren't really into this stuff and have never really had much exposure to it. This was a younger person I was talking about. Yeah. I can absolutely see why they would like that movie. Like it is visually gorgeous, and there's stuff there that it's not hard for me to see why somebody would go into the third Hobbit film and come out feeling very good about what they just watched. Yeah. I didn't feel that way, but I can imagine somebody else feeling that way. Yeah. There are other things that were that are harder for me to imagine anyone liking. But at least in terms of those things where I'm like, I didn't like it, it was never hard. I wanted to like it so bad. I wanted it to be so good. And I remember watching the second movie, and I was with Ren Weichman, Ren the Reaper. He's with Corridor Digital, and some of those guys too, along with Brandon Latch from the Freddie Wong channel. All these, we all went to this like
where we're talking
party
about
in LA. These are the old school
ancient
YouTubers.
times, the ancient times of YouTube.
Long time ago.
If you know Freddie W. rather than Rocket Jump, even if you know Rocket Jump, to be honest, that's old enough.
Even
now. We used to hang out with these guys sometimes.
Yeah. So I went in LA after like a Nintendo party. We went and watched the second Hobbit movie, like midnight showing. It was like right then. And we were talking about it on the drive back, and I was like, you know what? I think we just don't want to admit to ourselves that was not a good movie, because we were trying to talk about, it was weird and the 48 frames per second and all that stuff. but it was no one wanted to accept that that movie just wasn't as good as maybe we thought it could have been. But I can absolutely see people still loving the movie for so many different reasons. So, anyways, to bring this back to video games, video games as an experience and as a time investment is a lot higher, is a lot heavier. There's a lot more involved in getting through a video game and kind of the interactivity that lets you have a more visceral experience, in my opinion. And most of these games are 30, 40 hours long.
And they cost a lot more.
And they cost a lot more money than a movie or even a theater ticket. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That you... like, forgive someone who likes the movie that they got for Christmas when they were 15 and they can only get like 1 or 2 games or whatever because their parents didn't have money. Like, forgive them for that. And even if they do have more sophisticated tastes, but still just like to play some of these, what we would consider to be maybe lesser done, lesser artistic, games, the experience, the personal experience that people have playing these games is often really valuable and can even inform their lives going forward.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to be too hard on people for liking it. And the whole purpose, like with the example of Final Fantasy VII Remake, one of these stated purposes was to bring in a new audience.
Yeah.
And you should know immediately when that happens that this game isn't for you, but that you don't have to be pissed about it. You don't have to be upset but because there are different reasons for a remake. Like, one, it's George Lucas. Technology got better. Another one, to bring in a new audience. Another one, maybe you want to like alter the theme a little bit to fit more contemporary issues rather than the issues that they were dealing with decades ago when the art was first made. That maybe that type of story can now be retrofitted into a new kind of theme. But that does ruin the original purpose of the original game. In a way, not the original game's still there, but it does kind of undercut maybe what the original game was saying when you represent it, but with a whole new theme and a whole different direction that it's going. But there's lots of different reasons for doing it, and I think any of those can be done properly. Yeah. They can be done well. They often aren't, and often remakes, I think, are treated poorly by the industry in general because they know it's a cash cow. There's the Mount Nostalgia that is full of gold, and they know that if they just mine deep enough into Mount Nostalgia, they can strike a vein and just cash in for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And I know we're not going in that direction, but that is such a big temptation that it's not really seen as that big a deal if you screw it up because we're getting the nostalgia bucks anyways, right? Yeah. It doesn't really matter. Mm. And so I feel like they've been ill-treated, but that they can absolutely be done well, depending on, to achieve any of those purposes, right? Yeah. But probably not all of them at once. If you're trying to achieve too many purposes, your work's going to be fractured and not make sense. But if you've got one, like we are bringing in a new audience, right? You're going to have to change a lot about these old games to bring in a new audience. And I mean a lot. And so like... That's what they were doing. That's the purpose of the goal. Did they achieve that purpose? In some degrees, yes. In some degrees, no. I don't know that they quite did as well as they were hoping that they would do, but they did bring in new people who had never played those games before. And many of those people who had never played them before really like that game and the battle systems and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And is there like a downside to that? Mm-hmm. To bringing in a new audience that really likes a thing, but they're liking it for the wrong reasons that I liked it. Oh man, I'm so mad now, And there's a part of me that can't help but do that. Yeah. It's like, no, you guys missed it. You don't get it. Like anyone who saw Star Wars in 1977 and is watching these new Disney Star Warses, they're probably just like, you guys don't get what was so special about this, right? And it's true, I don't. But also, I can't. Like, I wasn't alive back then. Yeah. I can't. This is what I have. Yeah. Freaking Disney Star Wars. That's all I got. Yeah. So, like, I made the best of the prequels when they came out. Like, I like them. I watched them many, many times growing up. Yep. I find them difficult to watch now. But I loved them as a kid, and they are formative. Like, we made, like, home movies of those Star Wars prequels. Yep. Like, the exact script of those
pretty much
of
the prequels going forward.
Because we thought those were dope movies, right? I don't know. Like... it can be done well. It often isn't done well, but the endeavor itself is valuable. And even if the only goal is to, these new kids nowadays don't know it, let's show it to them in a new way that they'll like more. I don't know. I just can't hate on that as much.
Yeah. There's, I think, 3 things in particular that you said there that I wanted to try and respond to. One was you said that this person you were talking to who liked the Hobbit movie
Yeah, the third
was a younger
Hobbit movie.
person.
He was quite young. He was about 19 when I talked to him.
So
Yeah.
that's one aspect I want to respond to.
Yeah. He was probably 16 when that movie came out.
Right. There's man, I don't even know where to begin to articulate this. It's really hard to like get at the point that I want to get to here.
Yeah.
There is something really powerful that I have realized in being at that age of those formative years, and how important just being in that stage of life is in having the kind of experience we're talking about.
Yeah.
I saw Star Wars in 1977 when I was 11 years old, and it was a magical experience that completely blew my mind and changed everything.
Yeah.
That kind of life-altering experience with art is not something that is impossible to have later in life. I have had it later in life. It's just much more rare, I would say.
Sure.
You don't have
absolutely.
that happen quite as often, and it's certainly not in the same way. It's the art at least for me, I guess I can only speak for myself, that I tend to have those sorts of experiences with are not the same types of big blockbuster, really exciting, huge budget type things that I did when I was a teenager. So that's one aspect of it. And one thing that comes to mind is some studies that I read up on. I can't remember why I did this. It was for a video that we were making about formation of memories. I think it was for our Vagrant story.
Okay, maybe.
I think it was directly because of the Vagrant story, which I won't spoil here. That I was looking into memory formation, like scientifically, what do we understand about it?
Okay.
And one of the interesting facts that came up was that people tend to form way more memories during that adolescent stage of life and maybe like young 20s age.
Sure.
By far, you create so many more memories in that stage of life than at any other stage in your life. And this explains to a large extent why time seems to get faster as you get older. It's like, wow, time's flying by. What's going on? Yeah. It's not that you're experiencing time different. You just remember far less of what happens in between big events that like, boom, got to remember that. That's a big thing.
So there are less moments. Right?
Yes.
It's the same number of seconds, but the moments are moments are longer.
During that particular time period, you're just, man, a lot of stuff is impacting you. Your brain has formed to a point where it can begin to grasp things and is hungry for experiences, and things are novel and new, and it's taking record of those novel and new things far more often. And as you get older, a lot of things become more repetitive. I've seen that before. I kind of know where they're going with that. It's not as memorable because it's not as novel because you've already seen something like it in the past. So your brain goes, don't need that. I already have something like it that I can use to reference. Does this make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there's a certain element of when you are that age and you are forming memories like that and you come across something that is novel to you, this movie would not have been novel to you being late 20s at the time?
Early 30s, probably.
Was it early 30s? I'm trying to remember when that third Hobbit movie came out.
Well, it came out in 2016? Or were they 1 year after each other? Were they just 1 year?
I can't remember.
It would have been 2014 if they were every year.
It might have. Well, I seem to remember that there was a delay, like a 6 month. It wasn't like year
it was like
year.
an 18 month.
It was like an 18 month kind of release schedule.
That's right.
Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Something like
that. Mid 20-teens, something like that. You're probably getting up towards 30 at some point. Yeah. If it's 2016, right at 30.
Yeah.
You're already kind of in that stage where like, I've seen some of this before. I saw the Lord of the Rings movies in high school, and you have a certain attachment to them.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be as novel. And for this kid, it was. And so the funny thing, I guess, is comparing that emotional experience between an older person who had something like that with a different thing, and in the ways in which it's different, because it is, in how it was made. You discussed some of the techniques.
Yeah,
48 frames per second, 3D.
Yeah, 3D.
Like, certainly a far different pre-production process, which led to certain problems and stuff, and different studio. I think it wasn't New Line Cinema at first.
Oh yeah,
right?
MGM
it was
stepped
MGM
in.
at
MGM
first.
stepped in, and Guillermo del Toro was supposed to direct it, but he dropped out, and
so
Peter didn't want to be the director.
I don't mean to be dismissive of the obvious sort of pre-production problems and shortcomings that were admitted by Peter Jackson and others in behind-the-scenes content, or to try to steer this conversation in a direction in which I'm trying to, like, I suppose, downplay valid criticism of things, right? Like well thought out, good faith criticism that, brings up legitimate problems with certain works of art, and say, well, you just weren't a young kid, and because you weren't, and because you're a jaded old person now, and you're just like, well, things were better in my day. That's your real only reason for critiquing it. I'm not trying to say that. What I am trying to say is it's a lot easier to, well, we've talked about this too. You have an emotional experience first, then you go backwards and logically try to build a reason or a logic behind why you felt the way you felt. The logic doesn't come first. The emotion, the reaction comes first. Then you go back and go, why did I feel that way? And you try to explain it away. So it's easier to do that kind of going back and going, I hated this movie and this experience because
and this is why.
Here's all the reasons.
Yeah.
Even though you're actually kind of discovering those reasons, like the fact that the pre-production process was a nightmare after you watched the movie. That wasn't the reason when you watched the movie. You watched Peter Jackson dismiss everybody on set because he was storyboarding in his brain on set.
Because they didn't have... that was wild. I can't believe that happened. And it's only because he was financially involved that he was able to do that. Otherwise, you'd get fired.
If you haven't heard the story, there wasn't nearly as much pre-production work done on the Hobbit films as on the Lord of the Rings. So they had years and years of preparation before shooting those original movies. In the Hobbit, it was a big mess, and so he had not blocked out or storyboarded the scene he was about to shoot yet.
Yeah, because it's supposed to just be 2 movies, right?
Yeah, he dismissed everyone from the set to go on break while he sat there and in his mind thought about what angles and which shots he wanted to do in the next scene.
Which is like during filming, that is.
Now, that's obviously not a good way to make a movie. That's going to lead to mistakes. It's going to lead to problems in the final result. So is that a fine point to make and a reason to bring up for why perhaps those movies had some problems? Sure. But it was not the reason why you emotionally reacted to it in the theater because you did not know that fact.
Right, yeah.
This is something you realized afterward and go, that explains what I felt.
Right.
But it doesn't really.
Sometimes it does. But
it can, but like, were you really thinking when you had that emotional reaction, they obviously didn't plan this scene out or storyboard it?
No, you're right. That is rare. But sometimes you can, I feel like,
tell. You can intuit there must have been
something like that.
Something
like,
along these lines.
Feel very well planned out.
Okay.
But I'm not, I'm just going to say usually you're right. I'm just saying sometimes, your epiphenomenal reasoning is actually right. Oh, good job. You hit on a thing that was accurate. Usually that's not the case.
Sure.
That is your broader point.
So the reason I bring this up is to say that you have an emotional reaction first, then you go back, try to justify that with your reasoning.
Yeah.
So this kid, 19, has this emotional response to the movie. And
never cared to justify it. He just thought it was dope.
Yeah, just
he
thought
didn't
it was
think
great.
much about it.
And now he's coming across all of these other people talking about how horrible it is.
Yeah, it's a bad movie.
And there really is something to be said about the fact that is a painful thing.
Right.
To have people you respect in a conversation you're having or otherwise should be on your team, so to speak.
Because I like Lord of the Rings
we like
too.
Tolkien, right?
Yeah.
We like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And like all of a sudden there's this divide.
Yeah.
And they're going over all these reasons why it sucks. And you feel bombarded because it's like, does that mean I have bad taste? Does that mean I'm not smart enough to like see the problems? And nobody wants to believe that. So then you start going back and coming up with all of your post hoc, sort of like reasoning for why it actually is great. And you have this cognitive, not cognitive bias. Well, it is a cognitive bias, but your cognitive dissonance, right, going on there, and it's not pleasant. It sucks to go through that, right?
Yeah.
So, having said all of that, it's interesting that, first of all, there's a certain age range I feel like is important. Yeah. You have to be in that sweet spot to really have that like brilliant magical moment. Yeah. And it's hard to find that again as you get older.
Oh, yeah.
And so another thing that tends to happen is people, as they get older, tend to turn to the sentiment, things were better or different in my time.
Yeah, which once again, sometimes might be true. Usually it's not.
Here's
not accurate.
Here's an interesting example, right? I believe it was my mother one time when I was listening to some music as a teenager in my house, who said something along the lines of, this music is so not only simple, but just like badly performed. The singers are not good.
Your mom is a musician.
She's musically trained, and she would talk about the music of her era and how much better the singers were.
70s.
Yeah, the better the singers were, how much better all this stuff.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, maybe that's true if you're talking about some unbelievable artist from the 70s whom you're remembering because that's the memory formation you had compared to some punk rock singer.
Yeah.
But to apply that as a broad stroke to the entire era and say that the artists of the 1990s and early 2000s were not as talented or not as innovative or didn't have something just as powerful to say as the greatest artists of the 70s is nonsense. The thing is that you had those formative experiences with that music in that time, and you're not going to have those as often now. And so it's going to seem like all of these memories you formed, boom, 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 back then, it was just like amazing. Turn left, turn right, everywhere.
Everything was great.
Music, and holy fetch, these people are incredible. It was happening all around me all the time. Couldn't get away from the amazing stuff.
That's pretty funny, actually.
Right?
That's a good point.
And now it's like sparse. It's like,
everything's bland.
And so it feels like everything was better in your time. But the thing was, everything was better in their parents' time to them as well.
Sure, yeah.
And all the 70s and 80s artists were freaking nothing in comparison to the 50s. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so there is a certain level of bias that is almost inescapable that comes with just the way our memory formation works, to where you will look at anything produced now in comparison to how you experienced it, and it just it is not possible to measure up.
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, I play Final Fantasy VII in 1997. I play Final Fantasy VII in 2020. Regardless, let's just pretend it was like a super faithful remake. They went one for one, and they just improved the technology and whatnot. There's just not a chance that remake will have anywhere near the same effect on me as it did at the time I played it originally. Not possible.
So true.
Right?
So true. Yeah, it's not possible.
So if we make that claim, then if an artist has an artistic reason, not the monetary commercial reason, an artistic reason
like a purpose
for remaking this thing, it is absolute folly and fruitless that they should ever attempt to please me with that product.
Which is why almost every new product is always going after the same demographic. It's the 12 to 18-year-olds. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So is there a purpose? Is there a point? Is there a satisfying artistic reason to take something that was made 20, 30 years ago and bring it to an audience of people at that stage of life today?
Today, yeah. Yes, I think there are.
So what would be some of those in your mind? I'll throw one out just to get it started. I think, let's just start with Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII has certain core themes about life, the sanctity of life, and most especially the impermanence of life, the need to fight against corporate greed and to protect the planet. These are all things that I think are evergreen in terms of their relevance. Right. There will never be a time in which those things are not relevant, and the way that that story was delivered can always be powerful. Is it not worth doing to take that story and give it to kids today who would not otherwise go back to a 20 or 30-year-old game and play it?
Right. It's just not going to happen.
Right?
Yeah.
The only way it would happen is like my father showing me his music and having that be a part of our bonding. Right. I were to show my child that because I had an experience and we share that together. It's not like the human being's mind in one generation changed so drastically that they can't appreciate something just because we have better graphics today, right? Hopefully you understand what I'm saying by that. Like, if they're introduced to it as it was without sort of like, I know what graphics today look like and they're better now, they would still appreciate that. There's still the same grounds to appreciate it in the same way that I did, right? So if I introduce them and we kind of bond over that, that's still possible. But what about for all the kids today who are potentially the audience for this video game, who didn't have parents who played that game or who didn't have parents who played any games?
Sure, yeah, which is quite common.
How are you going to get them interested in trying something by just releasing it exactly how it was?
This is where film and books diverge quite heavily. A book that was written centuries ago can still have a similar impact, can still be picked up by the next generation. Video games, that is way less common.
Visual medium is...
Sometimes it's just impossible to get it, right? Some of these old NES games, you had that conversation with Good Old Games about game preservation and how a lot of things are just slipping through the cracks because they haven't been preserved properly. And some of the games, like, we can't go back and experience them in their original form, like, at all. Like, they're either just lost or there's a prohibitive reason why. There's some reason why you just can't access those games, right? So even if somebody wants to, it's not always super accessible. Whereas with a book, it just, I guess you have to have the book, but the internet has kind of fixed that for a lot of people. So in that case, this is where there's quite a big difference there. And it is way less likely.
I do think there is at least one similarity.
Yeah.
Language changes a lot.
Oh, that's true.
So if you're reading a book from 200 years ago, it's a lot harder to get into it language-wise, understand what they're really talking about and culturally, like, why.
It can be more difficult,
So maybe a remake of a story of a novel written with modern language or something like that. I don't think, I mean, it does happen. It's not like quite to the same degree that movies and games are, but
you still will get the same gatekeeper problem.
Sure, exactly.
Which is, the original, I see this often with translations of old works, like for the Iliad, right?
Yeah.
You have this new translation that people really love, was done by Robert Fagles, and it's really good. It's a really good translation. But some of the people who like the previous ones before him are like, no, the old translations, like Dante's Inferno. This is a pretty good example. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow did a translation of Dante's Inferno in the 1800s. Like, it was the classic Dante's Inferno for a long time until, and now John Ciardi and some other people did different translations like 50 years ago, and the new people translate it now. That book's been translated 1,000 times. And there are so many people who are like, no, you're missing the poetry. No, you're not capturing the essence. But it's so difficult. Even Italians have a hard time going back and reading the original Dante's Inferno.
Yes.
It has to be updated in some way for people to be able to consume it.
Otherwise, it would be essentially lost art.
Exactly. Right? It would just be lost forever.
It would be totally lost because that language is dead now, and nobody can understand it or enjoy it anymore.
Yeah. So I have 5 or 6 translations of Dante's Inferno, and I have Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's, and it's really cool. But I have this one from Borders that I was actually upset when I first got it because I bought it online, and it's just a prose. It's a, how would I even put it? It's not poetic at all. It's just paragraphs. It's just block of text telling me the story of Dante's Inferno. And I was like, this isn't what I wanted. I want, some of the other translations that are more poetic. Well, I actually finally decided I'll just read this version, whatever. I've read the other ones before. I'm reading this one now. And it's in modern, like just modern prose, right? But it's actually quite good. And in some ways it helps illuminate the text of the poetry that is kind of obscured by the poetry. And I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Like maybe you should read this one first before you start reading the poetry. Because I'll admit, half the time with Dante, I'm like, this is super cool and it sounds awesome. I don't exactly know really what they're talking about though. And there's like notes that tell you that, but it's better to be able to just read a work in its own plain form. And we don't have access to Italian poetic meter. Like it's just not, like he wrote in triplets. It's just not common anymore to write that way.
People wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, you don't get it. And the way they rhyme things and rhyming in English is different.
Not just the words, but the form, the rhythm. Yeah. Like all of these things are part of understanding the art because they were all intentional aspects of it. Yeah. And if you are so far removed from the culture and the language in which that was created that you can't understand it, it might as well be lost.
Totally.
Right?
So you're right that there is a close similarity between those two.
At what point does altering it or changing it, we'll call it translating it again?
Well, the word translate sometimes means to move or to change. Yeah, like in After Effects, you have translation, scale, rotation. Translation means to alter and to move something around, right?
So at what point is that justified for the sake of art preservation? Right, because art preservation would be one of the reasons why re-releasing something, remastering it, in this case, or remaking it, would be done. Because, like in that conversation I had with GOG, there's so many games that are basically already lost to time. And it's really complicated if you even wanted to try to bring them back, because who do the rights belong to?
Exactly.
We don't even know.
Yeah.
And so there's legal reasons why this is a problem too. And so... But in these cases where you have like a vast amount of time that separates the modern audience from the original audience.
700 years,
I feel like there almost becomes a requirement of translation in order to preserve the thing. It's a little bit different with, like a painting, right? When we're talking about literal art preservation in that form.
When those need to be touched up.
Because they're degrading.
Right.
And so like, you're trying to, the aim is to restore it in such a way to where it would look as close to as is humanly possible what the original one looked like. But after how long does that no longer really become possible?
Yeah, it's almost a Ship of Theseus problem.
Right.
And also, at some point, the Deku tree just has to die and a new sprout has to grow in front of it.
True.
At some, I remember thinking about this. Just today, actually, I drove past this massive willow tree that has been around, because I was born here in Utah. I know I moved away, but it's been there ever since I've been alive, basically. I remember seeing it when I was little. And it's still there. It's huge, and the willows are droopy. There was also one, remember Bicentennial Park in Provo?
Yes.
It had that huge gnarled tree. It's not there anymore. They had to cut it down.
Cut it down.
And when I first learned that they cut it down, I was upset. I was like, that tree. But it's a tree. It can't be there forever, right? What are you going to do? Like petrify it? Or like you can't just freeze it. You would have to basically kill it when you do that.
Yeah.
The tree has outgrown itself. It is too big for it to support its own weight. It is centuries old. And at some point, it's like it's a health hazard. Like it's going to break over somebody's head one day, Kids are always trying to climb on it. And like it was cool, and we filmed with it many times, and so I've got this nostalgic attachment to it. But at the same time, this was a living thing that lived its life, and it had a good life, a long life, and a good life. And it is not time for us to worry about preserving everything in ice and freezing it so that it never changes, right? Yeah. But at some point, a new tree has to be planted there, and one day that tree will be as big as that old tree was. But in the meantime, we all have to just hem and haw about how little this tree is, and the other tree was bigger. But it'll get there eventually, And it may not be the same tree. Of course, it won't be the same tree. But it can offer a similar experience to the next generation of children whenever it gets big
Exactly.
enough. And that is kind of the point. This is a natural order of things. And as I feel like I've gone through a similar process that you have through many different things. Not least in part because I played the Silent Hill 2 remake.
Right.
And I freaking loved it. Well,
a lot of people did not like it.
A lot of people did not like it. But it's because I'd only played the game once, and while we did dive into the psychological themes and whatnot, and we got way into it, I really loved that game, the original PS2 version. I hadn't been so attached to the game that I was upset about any of the changes when the new one came around.
Right.
And I actually thought the remake was quite good and quite faithful. And the performances were great. And I have no qualms with it whatsoever. Max Starrett had a couple. I talked about it with him.
Yeah.
He was like, well, it's not perfect, but it's good. It's really good. But then to be thrown into a world of people who all hated it when I loved it is like, well, that's weird. It kind of just makes me like not want to partake in the community anymore,
Yeah.
you know, like a little bit, at
Yeah.
least to some degree. I'm just like,
Yeah.
all right, well, whatever. I'll just play games and like it and not enter your community, I guess. But I'll just do my own thing over here. I don't know that that's what you want when you're trying to foster or nurture love for something that
Right.
that is like a piece of art or anything. The best approach isn't necessarily to like attack people who like any alterations to it. That being said, I also experience it the other way, where I'm like, don't change this. Like we talk about the King James version of the Bible.
Yes.
Talk about many different translations.
Yes.
That
This is 500
Bible,
year of
I think
separation from that
so
language.
many, and I love it because there's so many reasons why the King James Bible is better than modern Bibles. but here's the thing: it's actually inaccurate in many parts because the research is very old and it was pre-Dead Sea Scrolls and
it
all
was,
of that.
It was not only that, it was translated from the Greek, which was translated from the Latin or something like that, right? Or the other way,
the other way around. It was translated
Latin
from the Vulgate,
and then from the Greek, and then
and the Masoretic,
the
and
original Hebrew or whatever.
Well, I don't know that we have the original, which is
we
part
don't have
of
it, but I mean,
exactly.
like the Greek would have come from
the original.
like that.
You're right. Yeah. And so it already kind of had some problems, but it got so entrenched in the community that the English language is built on the King James Bible and Shakespeare. That's like it, right? And it's like, that's what English is built on. You take one of those out, like, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. So there's a unity aspect where it's like, oh, whenever, you quote things or whatever, and it's like, oh, yes, I remember that. But nowadays, you can quote the Bible to me, somebody, a version of it that I don't know of, and I won't even know you're quoting the Bible. I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know. Sounds kind of, I don't know where you got that from. It's like, dude, it's a freaking Bible. I'm like, oh, but they should have said thee and thou. Like, you did it wrong, And so there's a way in which you can kind of fragment a community this way, where you have different versions of the same thing. And the gatekeepers are trying to keep everything together. But the reason the King James Bible exists in the first place? It's because the previous gatekeepers were trying to keep things together and not letting them express in their own unique language and culture and all that. And so, boom, they broke out. But and there's a way that we can kind of do the same thing when you gatekeep too hard.
Where
and it's like,
they wouldn't allow it to be translated from Latin. You had to go to the church and listen to a guy recite the scriptures in Latin, even if you didn't know Latin.
And they would provide a homily in the colloquial language, but the scriptures were always quoted in Latin. Kind of similar nowadays, although this is a little bit different. I probably shouldn't bring it up. So there were translations into the vernacular, though, pre the Gutenberg press.
Oh, sure.
So the first translation in English was actually 980.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, long time ago.
Way back.
Yeah, this would have been Old English.
Yeah, and this was the Old English. Yeah. So there are gospels, there are existent gospels translated into Old English, and that's weird because it's like, wait a second, didn't Wycliffe get burned because he translated in English? Like, what's going on here, right? Well, that was the church approved one and all that kind of stuff. It got really messy with the printing press, and the technology is often a driver with these things. It's like there's just like with George Lucas. Oh, there's new technology now. We can do billions of things, and it's like, shoot, but should you? And now, even though I gave you allowance to have an English Bible in 1,000 years ago or whatever, I'm going to revoke that now, because now anyone can write their own Bible, and that's not really what we were expecting, and anyone can just make their own translation and get it printed for, well, it's maybe not cheap by today's money, but certainly cheaper than it would have taken for a scribe to hand write the whole freaking thing, which is the way it was done before. So I don't know, and technology is often the driver of these things. When the technology gets better, people want an update of the previous thing into the new technology. So at the very beginning of this episode, I mentioned that technology may not be the best reason, pure technology alone. I still would stand by that, but I think I would soften it a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes the technology itself is sufficient reason to remake something that was made previously. I don't know if it's the only reason, but it is a valid reason, and I kind of wrote that off at the beginning of this episode. So
yeah, there's so much there that I kind of want to like weave into my response. You talked about how we, for instance, right? We grew up in a religious community that read the King James Bible.
Yeah.
There was something about that language that resonated with me. I love that state of the English language from that time period.
Me too.
To me, it's the beastliest form of English there is. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Everything sounds 100 times more hardcore in biblical language than it does in TikTok language. So it just does.
Very nice.
It just does. It just sounds more awesome to me.
It's true. Very true.
But that is in large part because I grew up
Your formative
years so attached to that language.
Yeah.
And there was such a grandiosity and like a level of reverence applied to these scriptures and to that language. And so when somebody else grew up not having that experience and they can't understand the words,
right,
and they have no idea what they're talking about, and then they get a version of it in which they can, it's just a better experience for them.
They're going to love it.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's something in that applies to this sort of epiphany or realization that I have had in terms of my previous approach to commentary and art appreciation or critique that I have had with certain games like the Final Fantasy VII Remake or Shadow of the Colossus. That's not to say, and I really, really am trying to walk a fine line here, that is not to say that my criticisms were not valid or that there weren't good arguments made or that I don't stand by some of those things.
Yeah.
It is to say that my entire approach to the reason why I even engage with art to begin with is changing. For most people, it's an exercise in entertainment.
Yeah.
I want to go in and have a good time with this thing. I want to be roused by the music and language and visuals and all this stuff, and I want to have a good experience with it that makes me feel great and excited or what have you, whatever emotions that you go through with a good piece of art. It's a personal thing. It's very much centered on my emotions. Do I not like type of experience.
Right.
And I do not say this. I just, the words came into my brain and I was about to utter them and it sounded so pretentious. It was unbelievable. I do not mean to say it in a condescending way at all. If that's the way that you want to approach art, it's a 100% valid way. It's the way 99% of people approach art.
Right.
So it's the way you're probably meant to. It's the way that it's like the natural, normal way to do it.
Yeah.
But there's a certain level to where I want to get beyond that. I want to get beyond my own like or dislike.
Right.
That's
as if that's the end-all measure.
As if that's why I'm here.
Right.
Or if it's the reason why I'm talking about it. I think that has become so terribly uninteresting to me in recent times. And so surface level as like a reason for engaging with something. And that to me, there are much deeper and far more interesting reasons to engage with something. And this experience I just had with Persona is a great example.
Yeah.
You go back a couple years here to my ranting and raving in our final episode of our Final Fantasy Tactics podcast about how bad the writing is in Persona 4.
Oh,
right?
No.
You remember that?
I don't remember that at all.
Where I was going crazy about like how repetitious the dialogue is and this conversation with Teddy and the other guys, and they just say the same things to each other back and forth. Move on! And I was like hitting the table and like freaking out. That's what Persona is! I think I said something like that. Right. People still will bring this up and they'll send links to this rant that I had because they thought it was funny or whatever. And maybe it was, but it was also incredibly dismissive and to a certain extent, it was incredibly self-interested to a degree to which I'm now, my eyes have been opened to how do I explain this? I had written Persona off entirely because I bounced off the intro of Persona 4 5 times, and I thought I knew what Persona was about. This is what Persona is what I literally said in that critique. This difficulty, this poor, in my estimation, writing technique. That's what Persona is what I said. And what I experienced over the weekend was that's not the case at all. Persona 3's intro is shorter than Persona 4's. It has some of the same, I mean, obviously, because it's part of the same series, it has some of the same writing style, it has that sort of slow burn simulation aspect to it. It's a little bit slower paced. Well, a lot of bit slower paced than maybe the stuff that I typically like. But it took me about 2.5 hours to finally get into the main gameplay loop of Persona 3.
Okay.
Whereas maybe 4's was pushing up to 5 or 6 hours. A
little bit
longer. So, I burned out on it. But I got to it. I got through that slow burn intro, and I got into the actual gameplay loop, and I went, no, that's not what Persona is. Persona is people having to make tough choices about how to spend their limited time.
Yes, that is Persona, yeah.
That's
limited resources.
The appeal of Persona. How do I spend my time today? I have this and this and this friend who want to hang out. I have this academic thing I, need to keep up with. I have literal monsters in another dimension I have to go fight to save the world.
Yeah.
I have money that I need to afford equipment to do that. So do I go work a part-time job today?
Right.
There's all these choices that need to be made, and you cannot do them all.
Right.
And this is the antithesis of the power fantasy video game, which is it allows you to do everything, to be the greatest in the world at everything. I can, Skyrim style, I can be the greatest archer and thief in the world, and also the greatest warrior, and also the greatest magician, and also this and also that. I can be the best at everything. You cannot do that. Persona makes you have to make tough choices, and most importantly, prioritize what's important to you. That's what Persona is about. And I was spending so much time getting in my own way, tripping over these technicalities of the writing and the dialogue, that I was missing what actually makes this a landmark legacy title and series and why it's so popular. And having that experience has really reversed a lot of not my positions necessarily or critiques, but just my reasons for engaging with it to begin with.
Okay, right.
And I think that's going to be very important for me and for this channel moving into the future in terms of what we cover and how we cover it and how we go about giving our commentary on it. Because in the beginning, when we made our change to Resonant Arc, we came up with a central mission to what that was about.
Right. Yeah.
And the two words we came up with to describe that were deep appreciation. Our job here is to provide a service to our audience, not to make my commentary about my personal opinions and my likes and dislikes.
Right, yeah.
But to articulate what it is about this landmark title that is considered in the zeitgeist, the cultural zeitgeist, as one of the great works of art of its time.
Right.
Articulate why, so that that person who is watching can go, oh my goodness, that's amazing. I love this thing even more now. That to me is a far more interesting pursuit or reason to engage with art than to just rant and rave about my own personal hangups or the opposite, or the things I loved about it. It's like, who cares? I'm just one guy. And another analogy that I thought of, and another, I guess, sort of turning point on this for me was, and I meant to look into this. I know I've talked to you about this in the past. I meant to look into what the actual system was called, and I forgot to do that. It's a political system that has been proposed in which it's the same idea as jury, like a jury of peers, right? People are randomly chosen.
Right.
and assigned, it's like a civic duty, that you show up in court if you're selected to do that. You don't have any other conflicts of interest or any reason why you might be compromised, to show up on a group of people who are randomly selected and make a decision about this criminal or innocent person's fate based on the evidence that you hear there. And they have to make that decision. And the reason why it works and why it's fair is because there's really something to this idea of the wisdom of crowds.
Right, yeah.
You get any one person alone making that decision, and they have all their own cognitive biases and other reasons why they may not make the best decision or may not be capable even of making the right decision. But when you get a group of people together who deliberate and add to each other's knowledge, you get much closer to the right answer.
Right.
That's not perfect. Human beings will never be perfect. The right answer is not always reached based on what evidence is available and whatnot. But it's certainly a lot better than just grabbing some person off the street who has all of their own thoughts about the way things ought to be and their own problems and failings in terms of their ways of thinking. It's certain you're going to get a lot closer with a group of people than you would with just one.
Right.
And this is illustrated, I'm sure many people have seen this, with a jar of M&Ms on a table, and there's a sheet next to it, and people say, make a guess at how many M&Ms are in this jar.
Right.
You take any one person's guess, and it's wildly off.
Right.
But almost always the mean or the average of guesses is really, really close to accurate.
Yeah.
And it becomes more accurate the more people guess.
Right. Yeah.
So the larger that pool, the larger that crowd is that guesses, the mean becomes very, very accurate to what that number is. And so to me, it's far more interesting to look at something like Persona now or whatever it is we might cover in the future and collectively take what the cultural zeitgeist, the opinions on that game, right? And sort of make a word cloud, so to speak, out of the reasons for why it landed.
Ah, interesting.
Okay, so
cool.
Here's all the opinions of the entire freaking internet that like played this game. What words would appear the biggest as for what summarizes what that thing means or what it's about or why people loved it?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
How can I discover what that is and then articulate that and go deeper on those aspects to help people appreciate that thing even more than they already did? That, to me, is the way that I want to move forward in my commentary on the stuff we talk about on this channel, and to do a lot less of the staging or platforming my own personal opinions. That's not to say that they're irrelevant or that they're not something that people might want to know. But I think that those things can come in supplement to that pursuit. Like, here were the experiences I had with it and why those experiences add to the big word cloud reasons. You know what I'm saying? Not really sure how to wrap up this point, but that's more or less kind of where I'm at.
I almost wonder if like the social media stuff, just the like/dislike, do you like it or do you not like it?
Yeah.
And whether you like it or not is what makes it do better or not. And you're just getting headlines. You're not really diving deep into things. You're just kind of looking at the 140 character limit or whatever. And you're just kind of scrolling through and liking or not liking things. And I almost feel if that's kind of added to, I don't know, maybe some approaches to video game stuff that's just like, that's all that really matters is whether you liked it or not.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah, because and I also want to emphasize that it's not like critique or criticism can't be a part of that process in a way that's not exclusionary.
It's just maybe shorter. Just like it's like 30 seconds. Did you like it or not? I didn't like it. Well, anyways,
there's a way to do it in which you're opening conversation versus closing the door on it.
Yeah.
Right, like here's a great example. I did a video on my impressions of the Shadow of the Colossus remake several years ago. It's an unlisted video on our channel now, but that game of all games is a highly interpretive work. It's it's very vague in its
Oh, yeah.
storytelling on
That's right.
purpose. And it's one of those types of stories where each person who plays it is going to kind of grasp or interpret something different. And the way that I was speaking about it was very authoritative and like definite.
Oh, yeah.
And even at the time I knew this is an interpretive work. So why am I being so like stringent, I guess, or exclusionary in the way that I'm voicing these grievances that I had? So like the shot that I was talking about, so I was breaking it down. This is actually really fascinating. Maybe I'll send you the link and you can like look at the comparisons, because I was comparing shot for shot, like how they remade the intro and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was actually stunning. It was amazing how closely they matched some of these animations. And I don't believe they were just carrying over animation data, because I mean they totally remodeled these characters and this horse and all kinds of things. But I mean, you see the ghost as I dropped the opacity on one over the other as the animation is matched, and it's just like unreal how close it is.
Yeah.
Right. But then I was getting into these extreme nitpicky details where, but see, in the original, they're using a really long lens here.
Right.
Right. And in the remake, they're using a shorter lens, a shorter focal length.
Yeah.
Now, the reason for that might be because when they enter this canyon, they really want you to feel the vastness and how deep and wide and expansive it is.
Right.
That might be a reason for that choice of a shorter focal length over the longer focal length. But the moon in the shot with with the shorter focal length is way bigger.
Oh, it's bigger.
So they actually physically made that moon huge.
That shouldn't be the case. I get it.
Right? It doesn't make sense from a cinematography standpoint for that moon to be so freaking massive, other than that looks awesome. Okay. And so they made an artistic choice that they wanted that giant freaking moon in the shot, even though they're using a shorter focal length. So I'm now getting in the details of how this doesn't make sense. This is weird. The color correction's off. They made it all blue and it was supposed to be kind of green, and they've tried to make it all beautiful when it's supposed to be really intimidating. And I'm talking about all these things in which I feel like they're off on the tone, right? But I got really nitpicky on a specific shot where it shows Wander, the main character's face, and he's looking at the girl as he's laid her on the little tablet, right? The altar there. Yeah. And in the remake, his eyes move from her kind of down to the right to the floor. Okay. And he's got sort of a somber, sad expression on his face. And in the original, his eyes were locked on where she was. And it's the, I'll put the camera here. It's the chin down, eyes up. This is how you make someone look pissed or determined, right? You do this with you put the chin down, eyes up. That's what they do on every video game cover. The main character, chin down, eyes up. They look determined or they look angry, right? So Wander's eyes, or sorry, his chin down, his eyes are up, his eyebrows are forming this really. So I read that expression as anger.
Oh, okay.
Right? He's furious at whatever happened that led to this woman's death. Later on, you find out they come from a tribe, and he has arrived in a forbidden place, a place that's off limits to this tribe, to bring her back. He wants to bring her back from the dead, and he mentions that she was sacrificed. Right? So I read in his face fury, hatred of the tribe for having done this to someone that he loves, and that he's going to do the forbidden thing. If necessary, break all the taboos of the tribe for revenge on them and to get back someone that he loved. Okay. So I read that expression and I said, they made him look all sad and weak in this. They're missing the point. Then I get someone in the comments as we're watching this video going, I didn't really read that as anger at the tribe, but anger at himself for having allowed this to happen. And I went, holy crap, that's a totally legitimate way to have read that too. That's interesting. The way I had talked about it was closing the book on a conversation. Oh, yeah. I was not ready to hear another interpretation. I was telling you how it was. And what I think is you can still offer those opinions or those interpretations. I could still voice that in a way that opens conversation, in a way that invites that. And I think when you do, when you give criticism in that form, it doesn't come across as you're trying to tell me why my taste in art is garbage and why I'm an idiot and I'm too stupid to get it.
Right.
Versus, well, this was my experience with it. I'd like to hear more about yours. So I think criticism can still be a part of the way that I engage and talk about stuff. But I really want to, and this will be the last point I'll put on this, I want to get beyond, is it good or bad to me? And get more into what has this thing done culturally in the larger landscape of the audience that moved people. And the art preservation side of it, you know, there's that conflict. I want to preserve, but at the same time, we need to learn to let go. We need to learn allow things to die. The mono no aware principle that we talked about in that one episode, right? There's a conflict between the two desires there that is really difficult too. So it's like when I play a remake of a beloved game and they've made even some wild changes to it and taken a very different direction. Maybe they're trying to deconstruct the original message. Or
that would probably be the more annoying option. But sometimes, like, you can't argue that that's never valid.
Maybe that's where I'll leave off because I think we've had a pretty good discussion. I want to get more thoughts from you, but
I just have one thing.
Okay.
You should love the original if you are going to remake it. If you're
I think that too.
And that should maybe place some prohibition on too heavy of a deconstruction.
Sure.
But at the very least, you should get people to remake these games that really loved the originals.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a way that the opposite could be true, but I think at least as a rule, for the most part, that should probably be how it's done.
This is a very fine point. And I'm glad you bring it up because I don't want it to seem like I'm doing a total 180 or something. Right. Because I'm really not. It's not about whether or not I'm changing my mind about the reasons why I didn't agree with a choice that was made. I'm just getting beyond that being the purpose of me talking about it.
Yeah, the point is something beyond that.
It's not that like, oh, I've reversed course and I love this thing that I one time
now
hated.
It's still about
now, yeah, exactly, right? So that's not what I'm trying to say. And I'm also, there can be really bad reasons for remaking something. You just touched on one. Yeah. The Witcher Netflix series is actually a pretty good example of this. It's pretty common. Well, I don't want to step on a rake here and misremember. But as far as I remember
fixing the problems of the original?
It was more or less confirmed that the writers of the Witcher Netflix series had no respect for the source material. They did not like it. They thought it was problematic.
Yeah.
They thought all of these things, and they wanted...
This is true of other shows.
They wanted to write their own story, but take advantage of something that another person had created to give them a platform and an audience to do their own thing.
Right.
I find that, and I have said this, and I will stand by this, I find that a despicable practice.
Yeah, me too.
If you do not respect, do not love, do not understand the original thing, again, you're not getting beyond your like or dislike.
Right.
Did you do the research to find the word clouds of what makes The Witcher special to its audience? And then did you use that as your guiding principle for adapting the thing?
Or are you just
like... That, to me, needs to be the reason why you're doing something. Now, if you're the original creator, let's say like Yoshinori Kitase, Tetsuya Nomura, some of these people who are making Final Fantasy VII, George Lucas, and you're making changes, or maybe you do want to deconstruct something, that's a totally different thing.
I feel like it's a whole different thing, yeah.
And maybe there's a good and valid reason for it. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to find holes in your deconstructions or what you're trying to say or how you're going about it. But certainly, it's not a reason to close the door on its validity as an option for remaking something.
Right.
Or to not be open to why a younger generation who are having their first experience with the thing and you're just sitting there, but you don't get it. You weren't there for the original. You're losing all the meaning. Like listening
Right.
to their reasons for why this thing touched and moved them, which are totally different reasons
Yeah.
for why the original thing touched and moved me, and not lamenting that fact,
Yeah.
not being angry about that fact, but allowing them to have it.
That's actually
Right.
fair. That's part of the reason why, like, we really haven't talked about the Rings of Power at all.
No.
And it's at least in part because if people like it, they can like it. And I know myself enough. I'm just kind of, I'm like okay with not really participating in it now. I know I won't like it. Like, I already know that. It's possible that I might like some things if I gave it a chance. I see that. I'm not closed to it. I'm just saying that instead of being raged and upset about it, I have come to pieces.
Yeah.
I've come to peace with it. When I was hearing about the production of it and how much was going to be changed and how I didn't feel like they were respecting the source material at all, I was upset. But I have calmed down a lot from that to where I'm just like, I'm okay at living in the same world where that also exists. I'm okay with it now, and I don't have to like it. That's not the point. It wasn't made for me. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's made. It's there. I can maybe one day watch it or not, but my choice is to abstain from watching basically all of that now, and just kind of be at peace with the fact that, what I like is still there. My formative stuff is still there, and it doesn't matter whether or not the people who come after adhere to what I deemed as some type of orthodoxy or not.
Yeah. In fact,
Personally, my personal taste.
yeah. In fact, they can't.
Right.
That's
true. That's a good point.
This is another thing that has really rung true to me. It's like, no matter how thoughtful and how much energy I put into this exploration and articulation of the reasons why Final Fantasy VII was such an incredible landmark title, and how it affected me personally, and how I interpret this or this or this scene or the way that this is said, and how that might be in conflict or contradiction with some later thing. No matter how good I am at that practice, there is not a chance that the original creator could create it again in a way that would perfectly align there.
Yeah.
And
it's like lightning in a bottle.
Even when modders, for instance, try to like the Moguri mod for Final Fantasy IX, they're just trying to visually update, but otherwise leave the game's hand.
Or like Oblivion, Skyblivion, the Skyrim mod that was Oblivion.
The reunion mods for Final Fantasy VII. It's actually almost hilarious to me how many options there are in there. Where you can do chibi models, but in this style, or full proportion models, or
because they're trying to hit everyone.
They're trying to allow everyone to sort of tailor or get as close to the ideal Final Fantasy VII experience for them. And no matter how hard they try, there's some option they don't provide, or one that they don't give you an option to turn on and off that I don't like. So if someone in that pursuit, as a hobby without budgets and time constraints and due dates and deadlines, can get that right for me, how can I expect anyone working in a business where the real reason for the remake is the commercial success? How am I ever going to expect them to do it? Right. They can't do it, because my personal experience with that title is mine. And and I also have to admit, that's not what the creator's intention was all the time.
Right.
As much as I can make cases for that, I will never know what was in the brain of that creator who speaks a totally different language from me, who grew up in a totally different culture from me, who had a totally different reason for making this than I can understand. I will never truly understand that the way I think that a lot of times we like to try to think we do.
Right.
Even if maybe I might be more right than another person, doesn't matter. I'll never get there.
Right.
And if it's impossible for them to do that for me, then I'm not the person they should be making the thing for.
Right.
Right. It's a totally fruitless pursuit to try to please me, the obsessive, hardcore, played the game 25 times, know it in and out player. That's not who you should be making it for.
Right.
If you're remaking something, It should be to capture a new audience who would never go back to that thing and deliver to them what were those big word cloud reasons and give it to them in a form that will appeal to them so that they will come buy the thing and experience it. And again, I'm not closing the door on the fact that sometimes your data might be wrong and the word cloud come up with is all off.
Yeah.
That's still a possibility.
Oh, absolutely.
But what I'm trying to say is I think that it's important to be more open to the fact that there can be legitimate reasons for changing things that upset you in order to translate an older work that is in danger of being lost, that is in danger of basically being not capable of being understood anymore, in order to give it to an audience and preserve some essence of that to a following generation. Now, 30 years is probably not enough time separated to where you need to completely retranslate that. But, there is still a certain level of cultural difference to where there would probably need to be some level of translation, but maybe not to the level of, I can't read Old English anymore.
I've been learning. I actually can read it pretty well now.
Well, maybe it would be better to say some dead language that. But there's levels to this. There's a spectrum upon which the amount of translation and changing is necessary to preserve. But what I'm saying is that you brought that up, and it sort of, I think, is a good point that some level of translation, the further and further you get removed from the original, and by translating, I mean changing, is necessary for the sake of preserving in the first place.
Right. And at some point, it will be necessary to make a lot of changes in order to accomplish that. And 30 years isn't the point where you need to make too many changes to preserve it. But at some point, another thought I've also had is like, in some ways, Breath of the Wild was a remake of the first Legend of Zelda.
Kind of, yeah.
Not really, but like sort of in some ways. And sometimes I just question, there's so much nostalgia bucks to be mined from calling something a remake, and that's why they call it that. But I also sometimes wonder what if they just didn't call it a remake? Yeah. What if it was something? What if this was just a new game? Like, let's say you do have a new thing you want to say to people, and you're even taking it from the previous game. Like, I'm going to take that theme and express it in this new way for a new audience. You don't always have to remake the original game to do that. There's a financial incentive to do it. But I think often it might be better to just make a new game, Yeah. And it can even be another Final Fantasy game, and it can even be a almost beat for beat remake of FF7, but it's FF17, not FF7. Yeah. And then people get the Easter eggs and everything's cool and it's a similar theme and it's in vain, but it doesn't have to be, we made FF7 again, because you didn't. You made a new game. You made a brand new game that's totally new. The characters have the same names and place names and the name of the game. You've just kind of, put this layer over it that says that it's this thing. But, sometimes I almost wonder if you don't just make a new game. And the only reason I can think of for that is mostly just financial incentive. I can't really think of a reason why. You're trying to ensure that it succeeds, but it's, difficult for me to think of a reason why you have to call it a remake of this game when it becomes so different.
I'm sure if we were to sit and deliberate long enough,
I'm sure there would be.
We might reach one.
Because,
we're not going to do that because we've been going for an hour and a half.
Okay.
But it will be interesting to see.
I'm sure there's a reason. I'm actually asking for somebody to
what
give
people
me a reason.
In the comments might say in response to that. I'm actually just excited in general to see what people think about this.
Yeah, me too.
And how far off base I am. But in any case, I felt like as all of these thoughts were coming together over the weekend after playing Persona 3 Reload.
Dude, I want to play that game a lot.
I like it. And by the way, I will play the PlayStation 2 version. I'm not going to
cool.
I'm just playing the remake and that's it. Like, I'm going to go back and compare. Because I find that an interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I'll probably play through the FES Persona 3 game because I just played like the demo of Persona 3 Reload, which is about the first 8 to 9 hours or so.
Okay. Whoa, the demo is 9 hours long?
Yeah, it's pretty long. It's like the whole first month
Okay, well.
of the calendar, I think. And so it's quite a lot. And so, I got a good 8.5, 9 hours, actually a little more. I think I got close to 10 hours out of that demo. But, I will go back and play the PS2 version. So I just want to make that clear. But anyways, as this was all kind of coming together, I just felt good afterwards. It just felt like this is a approach that's right for me, I think, to where I feel like I'm going to get a lot more out of the stuff that we discuss on the channel. I
think that's true, yeah.
Right? Like, particularly in what we do, in the discussions that we have, I think that we'll have a lot better discussions because of some of this. And getting beyond I still need to come up with a better tagline for this. Beyond, do I like or do I not like? What's a better way to word this?
Like and hate, beyond like and hate.
Beyond like and hate.
That's interesting.
Beyond love and hate, beyond like and hate.
Love and hate, beyond love and hate.
I
don't know.
Yeah, whatever it is, whatever catchy tagline someone can come up with in the comments for that, I think this is the right approach for me in terms of like art appreciation, art analysis. And I'm excited to start digging into stuff that maybe in the past I would have dismissed or been like, nah, I don't want to talk about that. I don't think that'll be good for the podcast because I don't like the game, and you don't want to hear me talk about something I don't like.
Yeah,
we've had discussions like this, like with FF16. Felt like people were disappointed by that series, and it was like, well, I didn't like it. What do you want me to do? Right. Well, what I can do is get beyond like and hate. And so that's going to be kind of my approach moving forward. Anyway,
somebody brought up a great one in the chat. Brought up that Takahashi. Now he couldn't make Xenogears Remake, even if he wanted to, because he left the company and he doesn't own the rights to it.
Yes,
but Xenosaga is kind of Xenogears again.
It is,
and then
kind of
Xenoblade is kind of Xenogears again.
That's very true.
But they're different games. Is kind of what I was getting at. Yeah. And it may not be like a direct remake, but it's the kind of thing that I feel, and Xenoblade being a bigger success than Xenogears even was, kind of maybe lends some weight to what I'm saying there a little bit.
Taking the same core concepts,
spinning
making
them
it
a
similar,
little differently, but just tell a new story. It's okay.
Yeah,
you want to tell a new story.
There really is something to the fact that Takahashi only has one story to tell.
Yeah,
and he just does it,
and he keeps telling it again, and it's awesome each time.
It's really great. I mean, there's a lot of ways to spin it or put a different sort of lens on the same ideas. That's not a criticism of Takahashi when I say that. It's an endearing sort of rib at him. But certainly even with the Xenoblade games, right? Like I loved the first, hated the second, and have so far from what I've played of the third really liked it. And I liked X. But in the past, it's like Xenoblade 2 would have been off the table to cover on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because like what am I going to have to say about that anyone will want to hear?
Yeah.
And I think that I've gotten to a place where I feel comfortable doing that now.
Dope.
So anyway, hopefully you guys like this episode. Look forward to.
Hopefully you like it. Who cares if they like it or not?
Get beyond liking and hating.
Just kidding.
Our episode.
No. Don't listen to Mike. Click the like button. Please click the like button. Because as much as we are beyond it, the rest of the world still works the way that it works.
We need your likes. Anyways, thanks, dudes. We'll talk to you next time. Peace out.
No.